when relationships that I love very much disintegrated again. There was a lot of challenge in seeing beauty there. Heartbreak can really blind you to the beauty and make you so focused on the destruction.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show, where faith meets personal development so you can have a bigger faith and a better life. What? You've never heard that before? I know. Guess what? That's exactly what we're talking about today. Today, we're going to talk about these two extremes of the faith world and the personal development world and how you can have a bigger faith and a better life here on this earth. And then I get to sit down with my good friend, author, speaker, and Bible teacher, Lysa TerKeurst, to talk about this subject and how we can seek God and see beauty in our lives again, even after heartbreak. And then at the end of the show, we are doing something completely new. You all send me questions all the time, and I've not had a great way to answer them for you. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to answer them right here on the Christy Wright Show. I will be taking some of your questions and giving you my best advice to help you win. But first, let's talk about how to have a bigger faith and a better life. Well, I'm going to tell you guys, I've talked about this a little bit before, but there seems to be two extremes. On the one extreme, we have the faith world, the church world, the Christian culture. And in this world, it is all about God and Jesus, which is valid, but it's taken to such an extreme that we're just going to sit and pray and wait, sit and pray and wait, pray and wait, sit and wait. Lots of sitting, lots of waiting, lots of praying, not a lot of doing. It's all about, I'm just going to wait for God to show me, wait for God to help me, wait for God to save me. God's going to do it all. I'm just going to sit around. It's very passive and can be to the extreme that we don't do anything in our lives. And we miss out on what God is asking us to do. And we miss out on the responsibility we have in a practical way here on this earth. It can be taken to such an extreme that we miss out on that important part of the equation of what it means to be a Christ follower here on this earth. That's one extreme. And I know this is a massive sweeping generalization, but this is one extreme and you see it out there. But then we have the other extreme, and let's call this the self-help world. This is where it's all about personal growth, personal development, self-help, help, me, what can I do for me? Hustle harder, run faster, read more books, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You run hard and fast, maybe probably ahead of God's plan, because let's be honest, you're not really slowing down enough to consult with God to begin with, right? Like you got things to do. You got boxes to check. You got ladders to climb. You're go. I'm going to be the best me I can be. And you miss out on the incredibly important spiritual aspect of the life you have on this earth and how your creator God can and wants to lead you in this life. So these are some extremes, right? You've got the faith world and you've got the self-help world. And I've noticed a trend where they seem to be at odds. Like, they don't like each other. And again, it's not all the time, and it's not every single person, but it's a trend. Like, I will see people in the faith world post about the self-help world or personal development world with their nose turned up. Yeah, there's an air of condescension of like self-help. How about God help? Personal development. How about God development? Confidence. How about Godvidence? Right? Like you hear all these things like as if you're a bad person for wanting to do things in your life to improve your life. As if somehow you hate God because you have goals. Or you're not a person of faith because you're trying to get things done or improve your life or grow as a person or have a better marriage or have a better life or have a better career. That all of a sudden you don't trust God because you're trying to do something. But then you see this other extreme. You see the self-help world look at the faith world as if it's just all fluff. It's just, oh, you're one of those Christians, you're religious. Oh, and it's this attitude of like, you're passive, you're soft, you're not doing anything. And they look at that world negatively as well. And so each of these worlds tend to be at odds. the faith world, the self-help world, as if somehow these things are mutually exclusive. But I want to argue that they're not. I don't believe that the faith world is mutually exclusive from the self-help personal development world. I don't believe that you have to choose between being a believer and having goals, or being a Christ follower and getting things done in your life. You don't have to choose between that. In fact, I believe that God asks us to do both and have both, to seek God and have goals, to live out our faith walk and pray and get things done in the practical, tactical aspects of our lives. In fact, I think it's called stewardship. I think it's called being wise with what we've been given. Now, neither of us want to swing to these extremes where you're sitting on your hands praying and waiting and never doing anything with what God's given you to do. And you don't want to swing to the extreme of running ahead of God's plans and not consulting with your Creator, who, by the way, everything is His anyway. But I believe there is this beautiful middle. I believe that there is this space in the middle where you can work like it all depends on you and pray like it all depends on God. Where you can trust God with every aspect of your life and do your very best with every aspect of your life. Have you ever thought about that? That you can do both of those things? That you can trust God with every aspect of your life and at the same time do your very best with every aspect of your life. To my friends in the faith world, how much more impact could you make? How much more impact could you make in your family, in your life, in this world, in your career, in anything, if you were wise and strategic and intentional with setting goals, reading books, growing, having education, developing yourself, learning from people better than you, smarter than you, more wise than you, more strategic than you? How much more could you do what God's calling you to do if you are a wise steward of everything you have? Don't think of stewardship as just a money thing, but money, time, talents, the relationships you have, the responsibilities you've been given, that you looked at that as, I want to be a wise steward of these things. I want to do my very best with these things because they're God's, and I want to honor God with them in the practical, in the tactical, that I'm going to engage in personal growth, that I'm going to be wise with what I've been given, not despite honoring God, but in order to honor God with those things on this earth. To my self-help junkies, those of you that love to be go-getters, set goals, you're probably type A like me and you love to get things done. How much more of an impact could you make if you stopped running so far ahead of God and slowed down to seek Him for what He has for you? How much more could your ideas be His ideas, not just your ideas? How much better could those ideas be? You know, His word says that His ways are above our ways. His thoughts are above our thoughts. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has been able to imagine what He has for you. Do you know what that means? That when you rest on your own strengths and abilities, you can't do a lot. You can do some, but you can't do what God can do. You can't create in your life the things that He can create in your life. What if you slowed down and consulted with your Creator? Your Father that loves you very much, that says the plans that He has for you are good. Would you trust Him with those plans? Would you slow down enough to hear from Him? Would you quiet your world enough to listen for Him? Would you slow down your pace and your doing and your productivity to seek Him? How much more of an impact could you make if your life became not all about you and what you can do, but about what God wants to do in you and through you? I'll tell you, the times that doors have been opened for me, the times that I have had some of the coolest things ever happen in my entire life were never my ideas. Me working here at Ramsey Solutions, by the way, was never my idea. God called me here. Even the story of how my husband and I bought our first home 8 years ago, Y'all, it's the craziest God story. I had been searching for houses, looking for houses. I'd been faithful with searching and researching and doing our homework. But our house that we got was more than we could ever ask or imagine back then. Your life is a lot different when it's the life God created for you and the life that God is in the process of creating with you. It's not either or. It's not we're just going to pray and wait and not do anything. And it's not we're going to do it all ourselves. I don't think either are correct. I think there's this beautiful middle that God calls us to. It is my vision for this show. It is my vision for my brand. It is my vision for my purpose on this earth is to bridge the gap between the faith world and the personal development world so you can have a bigger faith in God and a better life on this earth. It's not either or, it's both and. You're going to work like it all depends on you, and you're going to pray like it all depends on God, because I guarantee you, you're going to need both. That's what I believe God asks of us, and that's what I want to help you do. You know, I've shared this story before on this show, but I want to share it again because I think it's a great illustration. There's a tale that Dave Ramsey has told of a farmer and a traveler. The traveler is traveling along the road and he comes upon this beautiful farm. Like, it is exquisite. It's got this perfectly painted fence that lines the beautiful fields. I mean, everything is immaculate. The farmhouse is perfect. It looks like something out of a postcard. And the old farmer is in the field and he's pulling weeds and he's working the farm and he's got his old overalls on and he's got his big hat on to block the sun and he's dirty and his hands are worked hard, you can tell. And the traveler coming up the road, he calls out to the farmer and he says, "Farmer, you have a beautiful farm. This is exquisite. It's immaculate. God has blessed you." And the farmer said, "Yes, sir, he has. And you should have seen what it looked like when he had it all to himself." What a great reminder. Yes, God will bless you. He can, and he will. And it's up to us to steward those blessings, whether it's with a farm, your time, your talents, your gifts, your relationships, your responsibilities, your influence, your money, anything and everything. It's up to you to grow and learn and be wise with what you've been given. Even in scripture, you see example after example how Jesus, when he did something for someone, gave instructions that followed. For the man that had been begging on the side of the pool for 38 years, Jesus healed that man and said, "Get up, take your mat, and walk." To the woman who was about to be stoned for adultery, Jesus said, "Go and sin no more." Even before Jesus was going to the cross, when he washed his disciples' feet, he said after that, "And now you should wash one another's feet." See, there was always instructions after the healing. There was always instructions and responsibilities and actions for the people in response to the blessing that he provided. So Jesus can heal you, but it's up to you to get up, take your mat, and walk. Jesus can save you, but it's up to you to go and make better choices. Jesus can love and serve you, but it's up to you to love and serve others. We have a responsibility in this life. It's not in opposition to our faith. It is an outworking of our faith. You need to work like it all depends on you and pray like it all depends on God, because I guarantee you we're going to need both.
We were drawn to Christian healthcare ministries because we both had young families and we wanted to have more children. And we had also just started a real estate company and needed to find healthcare coverage that would meet our needs.
We were attracted to CHM because of its low monthly costs and the ability to negotiate medical costs down.
Established in 1981 and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, CHM is here to meet the needs of your growing family or small business. Check us out at chministries.org.
We absolutely believe in it.
All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with my good friend and multiple New York Times bestselling author and president of Proverbs 31 Ministries, my good friend, Lysa TerKeurst. Lysa, thanks for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime I get to spend time with you, Christy, it's a good day. So thank you for having me.
You know, I remember years ago when we were both speaking at the Propel Women's Tour, and I remember sitting with you at dinner and I was asking you about writing. and about books because you have written so many books. And I respect you as an author. I look up to you as an author. I read your books. And I was asking you a little bit about your writing process because you've written so many books, but I know you well enough by now to know none of them are without incredible thought and intention and prayer. And you have a new devotion called Seeing Beautiful Again, 50 devotions to find redemption in every part of your story. So I want to dig into this new devotional book, and I want you to tell me, why did you want to write this book right now?
Well, my last two books, It's Not Supposed to Be This Way and Forgiving What You Can't Forget, those books were really meaningful for people in really challenging situations, either an extreme betrayal, disappointment, heartbreak, hurt, or struggling to move forward and having a lot of resistance around forgiveness, knowing it's something that we should do, but really not wanting to do it, and a lot of misunderstanding around forgiveness. And so because those books were so meaningful to people, we started to realize it would be great to have a devotional book that pulled from those two resources into one devotional resource, some of the most helpful writing in each of those books, but also as I've gone through my own journey of healing and learning to move forward and life still not looking exactly the way that I thought it would look, and dealing with things that are common to a lot of people, I wanted to pull pieces of writing that I had in my journal and make it very personal. So we combined all of this. We combined some of the best parts of those two books and a lot from my own personal journal. And I wanted this book, Seeing Beautiful Again, to be like if I had you over to my house today, Christy, and we were walking through the yard, and you started asking me questions about some situation that's hurting you right now. This is the conversation that we would want to have, and this is what I'd want to say, and I put it into Seeing Beautiful Again.
I love that, and I love how practical it is, too, that one of the things I've noticed in my own life, but I've heard from women all over the country is, there's not a single event you go to that changes your life. There's not a single resource you read or consume. It's this daily reminders, really. It's continually walking with the Lord and seeking Him, but I love the idea of devotional because it's something that brings you back again and again and again to those truths when you might be having a hard day or you might forget some of those things that you know, but you need to be reminded of. I want to talk about this idea of even the title, Seeing Beautiful Again, because I know with you, words are never wasted. You're very intentional with what words you use. Why did you decide to not only title this Seeing Beautiful Again, but even take this stance on the difficult parts in our life instead of just moving forward or focusing on the good? Like specifically beauty is such a kind of a cornerstone of this message. Why did you choose that?
It's such a good question, Christy. No one else has asked me this question.
Oh, yay.
And I
always like that as an interviewer that I get something new.
And I love that this is such an important question. So a couple of years ago, I decided to build a gathering spot at my house on the property that I've lived on the same property for 30 years. So it's a very special place for me. And I decided to build a gathering spot because I wanted people to be able to come together in smaller groups, and I wanted us to break bread and share our broken hearts and model what I see Jesus doing. I mean, Jesus spoke to the crowds and he spoke to the individuals, but he also sat at tables with people. And I was missing the sitting at tables with people. And so I built a place where I could have 100 people come over for dinner and we could gather, and beauty became my word for that year. And so every decision I would make, I would ask myself, how can I see the beauty in this? And sometimes it was easy, like decorating the gathering spot. It was easy to see beauty in that. Some things were harder when relationships that I love very much and have worked really hard on disintegrated again. You know, there was a lot of challenge in seeing beauty there because heartbreak can really blind you to the beauty and make you so focused on the destruction. But it was interesting because what I started to realize is it wasn't going to be possible for me to discover beautiful again by making all of my circumstances okay. That I had no control over a lot of the circumstances and how they were going to turn out. But what I could do is intentionally look for beautiful in the midst of the hard circumstances. And I don't know if you've ever had this, Christy. Have you ever had a situation where it's like, okay, I'm going to go buy this car and it feels so unique and like you very rarely see this car. But then once you have that car in your mind, suddenly you see 3
Yes.
at church, 2 in the drive-through line, and 16
It's everywhere.
in the Walmart parking lot, right? It's everywhere. And that's the way I think it is with seeing beautiful again. I think if we have beautiful as an intentional search in our day, then we'll see it more and more and more. And I want to help people in their life, no matter what they're going through, to have beauty as something that they're intentionally seeking. And it's not beauty like, let me curl my hair better or, let me wear a cute outfit. It's not that. It's noticing evidence of God's goodness and God's faithfulness and our creative God who has intentionally placed beautiful things all around us. If only we will notice. And when we notice, it reminds us God is there.
It's amazing. It makes me think of Jenny Allen's book, Get Out of Your Head, which I know you're a friend of hers as well, when she talks about how scripture and science actually agree, and the neuroplasticity, even the science behind that of the more that you look for something, you're retraining your brain to see that more. And God, tells us how to do this in his word. And then as we do it, it becomes easier to look for those things. I love that. I love that reminder. One of the things that I'm curious about, because when you talk about beauty in your book, another word that comes up again and again and again is truth. You don't say just beauty, it's always beauty and truth. You're putting those together a lot. So I want to talk about that side of it too, and the importance of truth in this message, truth in our circumstances. What did you mean by that? And why was that another word that you really always paired with beauty, it seemed like?
Well, because it's the truth that sets us free. I mean, that's what the Bible tells us. And so I think here's a statement that I hear a lot of people say, and it's always concerning to me. I get it, but I think we need to be careful when we say it. And it's the statement, I just need to be true to myself. And I do get that. Like, I would never encourage someone to, not be true to themselves. But my caveat there is we have to be sure that we're being true to our most healed, healthy, whole, surrendered to God's selves. Because if we're being true to our most unhealed self, that can really take us to some deep, dark places. And so I think as we look for beautiful, we must also make sure that our truth is lining up with God's truth.
Yeah.
And that we recognize that God's truth isn't something that's meant to cage us or to limit us. It's actually in God's truth where we find the freedom to operate in the most beautiful way possible.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because I think there are certain words or phrases that become popular or trendy that you can look for the good intention. You're going, okay, I can see how that would be, make sense or be true. But then there's other ones that kind of make you have a little bit of a head tilt or a red flag. One of the things I've been talking about today in this episode is it seems like there's these two extremes with the faith world and the personal development world, and sometimes they're at odds. And I said, I don't believe they have to be. I think you can work like it all depends on you, pray like it all depends on God. There is an earthly practical application of our stewardship here on this earth, and we are surrendered to our loving Father that protects us and provides for us. And one of the phrases in the personal development world, one of the phrases that gives me a little bit of a pause, similar to what you're saying, is your truth or my truth. And I'm like, that to me can get into dangerous territory because there's one source of truth in the Bible, but I love how you bring us back to that and remind us of that so that in that we find freedom, not to feel limited or restricted or boxed in, that it's actually for our good, for our protection and all of that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, speaking of truth, kind of the other side of this, another kind of popular, trendy thing right now, is feelings, this topic of feelings. And we have a lot of feelings. We've got thoughts about our feelings have feelings, lots of feelings. And there's this popular trend of like, you got to feel your feelings, you got to honor your feelings, we got to hold space for our feelings, we've got to be the feelings. And it's this hard balance, Lysa. I really want to know what your thoughts are on this, because you don't want to ignore your feelings. You don't want to completely be like, well, just pretend that I'm happy and we're going to have this blind optimism and just ignore the heartbreak, the pain that is real that people walk through. I know you have walked through yourself. So there's something so valid and true about your feelings. And that's not the end of the story. We don't need to be victims to that. We don't want to stay stuck in that, because again and again in Scripture, God tells us what to set our mind on, what to focus on, what to think about. So how do you balance these two? I'm really, curious, especially in light of what you're talking about. We want to see beautiful. Again, we want to look for beauty. And at the same time, we have these feelings that are, so real, so visceral, so powerful, sometimes overwhelming at times. How do you help people with these two realities?
I think feelings are very important, because I think they were given to us by God to help us experience life, but they were not given to us by God to destroy life. And so we have to be careful where we use feelings the proper way and we acknowledge them. I'm not able to deny my feelings. Like if I'm feeling something, it's so real that it can almost threaten to consume me.
Right.
And so I have a statement that I say to myself often that I wrote one time. I think it was in my book, Unglued, but it's just literally stuck to me. And I say it often. My feelings are indicators, but not dictators.
That's good.
In other words, my feelings can indicate something that needs to be healed or tended to, a discussion that needs to be had. My feelings are a great indicator, but they should never be a dictator of how I act and react. And to me, that's really important. And I carried that into the book that I wrote on forgiveness, forgiving what you can't forget. I think part of the reason people have a lot of struggle with forgiveness, and I shouldn't say people, I should say part of the reason why I have a lot of resistance toward forgiveness at times, is because I kept feeling like if I forgive this other person, then that's me saying that what they did wasn't that big of a deal. And it was a very big deal. And it started to make me feel like the hurt that I experienced would be diminished, and I would be expected to be healed instantly once I forgave. And I just knew that's not the way that it really plays out in the reality of human angst, emotion, and hardship. And so I taught people in that book something that my counselor taught me, and I think it's a very profound lesson around feelings. He taught me that there's two parts to forgiveness, that you forgive for the fact of what happened, and that's a one-time decision. And so you can literally say, I am making the choice to be obedient to God, and I'm forgiving this person for the fact of what happened.
Okay.
But the second part of forgiveness is forgiving for the impact that had on you. And the impact is that emotional healing journey where we tend well to our feelings, our hurt, our heartbreak. And that can leak into our lives for months, years, and days to come. Now, where sometimes it gets confusing for people is we make the decision to forgive, and then all of a sudden, 6 weeks later, we're driving the car, we get triggered in our pain, and those feelings of bitterness come back, and we think, great, I'm a forgiveness failure. You're not a forgiveness failure. You're just in the second part of forgiveness. So always remember, there's a fact of what happens to us, and there is an impact that had on us. It's that impact that causes the rush of those hurt feelings when we're triggered. But how good of God to let it be that this is the way that it works out. Because if the full impact of hurt and heartbreak were to hit us in the moment of trauma, then it would probably kill us. Yeah. And so the fact that it can leak out through triggers, for months and years to come, the important thing is to deal with those triggers and not say to myself like, oh, I'm such a bad Christian, or, oh, I didn't forgive. Like those feelings are indicating something is there. And so we tend well to what's there, and give yourself a lot of space for grace to deal with the impact of what you've walked through.
That's really powerful. And that's so, you're so good at making things so memorable. That's one of the things I love about you as a teacher and writer is just the memorability of the fact of what happened and the impact and giving yourself grace for that time. And it's going to take time. And that's good as a reminder for the other person and how we see them in the situation, but even for ourselves in that journey that you're not a failure. Lysa, I'm curious, and I've never asked you this before, but one of the things that I struggle with when it comes to feelings and thoughts about anything, it doesn't have to be what someone has done to me. It could be a situation. It could even just be on a given day how I'm feeling about something. I really have trouble sometimes discerning which feelings are valid indicators that show me I need to tend to something, heal from something, have a conversation. And which ones are just lies from the enemy? Which ones are just totally off base? And I don't need to tend to anything because that is out of another planet. And it's just that, like these little seeds of, well, you should have done this better. You know, when women carry around guilt that's not theirs to carry at all. And I see it all the time. I know you see it, Lysa. And there's nothing, those feelings are not valid. They're not true. They're not real. Do you have anything to help us discern and weed through it? And I know that's a big question, but that's something I really struggle with where I'm going, okay, Lord, is this feeling trying to point me in a direction or is this just out of left field?
Well, here's what I would say. The minute that feeling kind of hits you, especially if it is triggering, if it's tied to some kind of hurt of your past. And my counselor will often say, when it's hysterical, it's historical. And what that means is when we feel an intensity of feelings that is out of proportion to the offense at hand or the situation at hand, we have gone back and pulled some unhealed trauma from our past that is similar in nature, and it's kind of ratcheting everything up. And what happens from a physiological standpoint, I'm going to get to the spiritual in a minute, but from a physiological standpoint, what's happening is our front logical thought is getting kicked offline at that point. And our amygdala, which is that place where trauma is stored and the intense emotions are, is kicking us into fight, flight, freeze, and then I add freak out because that's more my tendency. Confession time with Christy. But what I have learned from a physical standpoint to sort out the feelings and to be able to get my mind kicked back into that more logical thinking so that I can better discern what's real and what's not, what's a lie from the enemy and what's a real feeling, all of that stuff. It takes 20 minutes for that amygdala to calm down. So give yourself 20 minutes. And during that 20 minutes, drink at least 4 ounces of water. It's scientifically proven that 4 ounces of water will reduce our anxiety.
Wow.
So that's important. Who knew, right? And I like to take my shoes off, go outside and stand in the grass and look up and remind myself the sky is not falling. And when I do those things and give myself 20 minutes, I can physically feel the logic coming back. And then the discernment is not always immediately there. And sometimes I have to tell people, don't force me to say how I'm feeling right now because I cannot figure it out. It takes me a minute. I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, so I can feel all kinds of different ways. So it takes me a minute to sort out, is this a feeling that I'm having because a past trauma got triggered? Is this a feeling that I'm having that is, I think it's attached to this situation, when in reality, it's really attached to that ugly email that I got this morning. And so I've got to make sure that I not only identify the right feeling, but also that I'm attaching it to the right circumstance so that I'm not having an out of proportion reaction to this situation in front of me that I later regret. And that's really the danger of reacting out of the rush of emotion. So those things help me on a physical standpoint. On a spiritual standpoint, Christy, the most important thing I can say is in that intensity of emotion, especially if you're going to bed at night and you're sleeping in that, and you're waking up and you're kind of like still processing it and trying to figure it out. I have learned to keep my AirPods and my phone queued up to a worship playlist, and I will pop my AirPods in at night and I will listen to praise music Currently, my favorite 2 songs I'm listening to are both by Elevation Worship. One is Jireh and one is Quiet, the stripped down version. And I will let those play. And Christy, as God is my witness, I hear that playing in the back of my mind during my day instead of all those anxious thoughts. And it is literally quieting my soul.
Oh, it's so good.
And so from a spiritual standpoint, when God says, let your praises lead the way. I love the story there's so many stories, but in the story of King Jehoshaphat, he literally fought his battles by sending praise ahead of him in the battle, and the praise accomplished what he could not accomplish in the physical. So when I lay in bed at night and I let those praise songs just wash over me, I fall asleep, but I wake up the next morning knowing I've already sent my praise ahead of me into my day, and my praises are fighting battles that in the physical, I will not have to fight.
Yeah.
And that is really good.
One of the things I love about you, Lysa, is your teaching is so practical. Everything from AirPods to walk outside, look at the sunshine. There's such practical things that you can do, and it really is this spiritual and the practical, which helps us as we go through these different situations. Even as you were describing the praise music in college, I had really bad nightmares, and I still do occasionally, but in college I was having them all the time, probably from past trauma, like you said, from childhood. But I was talking to this woman that mentored me, and she said, Christy, there's power in the name Jesus. Even in your sleep, even in your half wake, half sleep, see if you can just say the word, just say the name Jesus. And I started training myself to do that in college, and still to this day, and I'll talk to my sons about it when he has a nightmare. It's amazing how the enemy flees at the name Jesus. So even just these practical things, as simple as when you're feeling helpless, just whether it's a praise music or just speaking the name Jesus, I love these reminders that we can take control over that to some level. We can do things that actually make a difference in those thoughts, in those feelings, in those fears that may creep up. Lysa, I could talk to you about this all day. One more question for you before we wrap up, because I know we're running out of time. Like I said, you've written a ton of books, and they are all so unique and specific to a specific pain point or something you've walked through. As an author, I'm sure they all are special to you in different ways. I'm just curious, as an author, what was your favorite part about writing this? What was your favorite part about this specific project?
My favorite part in Seeing Beautiful Again are the letters that I wrote specifically as check-ins with the reader all the way through. I've never done that in a devotional book before, but I wanted this book to feel like a personal conversation with a friend. And so it has devotions all throughout. Obviously, it has 50 devotions in it that are pulled from my journal and pulled from the 2 previous books, but it's the letters that I wrote that are my favorite part, where I just make sure, I think more than wanting to be instructed, a reader wants to be understood. And so I wanted to just make sure all throughout the book that I'm like, hey, I'm with you. I'm hurting too. We're going to get through this, and we're going to do it together. And if no one else has told you today, hey, girl, I love you.
Oh, it's so good. It's amazing, too. It's just like the quote, I can't remember who said it. People don't know how much you know until they know how much you care. And just those reminders from you that let people see that you care. Lysa, this is such a gift. I can't wait to dig into it. And just your gifts that you share with other people, I know have not only inspired people here on this earth and how they live their lives to improve their relationships and forgive and all the practical things we're talking about, but just ultimately to draw them closer to the Lord. And I know that's your heart that you pour into everything you do. And I'm so, so, so grateful. Okay, Lysa, I've got this new thing I'm doing, just rapid fire session at the end with some random questions. Are you good with that?
Yes, I'm not very rapid.
That's
but
okay.
Let's
It
try
could be your slow version of rapid. Lysa's pace rapid. Okay, here we go. First thing you do when you wake up in the morning.
First thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I drink some water.
Oh, good. That's a good reminder. Keep us with water again. Okay, what is one thing that you are just loving right now? It could be a product. It could be a resource. Just something that you're just loving. Totally random.
I am totally loving putting white eyeliner right here and here because it makes my eyes look bigger.
There you go.
And so I'm totally loving that right now.
That's a good tip. I'm going to try it. Okay, what is one thing that is your favorite thing to do for just kind of me time or self-care or alone time? Like, what is something that makes you feel refilled?
Can I say two things?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I love to read. And while I read fiction books, I take notes of phrases that just really grab me. And so when I have family dinners, I love to read my collection of phrases and try to get my kids to guess the context of what that was.
That's cool.
And so that's hilarious. So I love to do that. My downtime, I love to walk through the woods with my dog and just remember that not all of life is chaotic. There are still really peaceful places that are so true to the way God created nature. And I just love that.
Oh, that's awesome. And speaking of, you have a big family. What's your favorite thing to do with your kids?
Right now, currently, we're on a sequence addiction. So we love to play the game Sequence.
Awesome.
We went through the Clue game. We played that for months and months and months. Now we're on to our new game, Sequence.
Oh, I love it. Okay, what is one thing, this is the last question, what is one thing you are really excited about or looking forward to right now?
I built a place on my property to have people over, and we're gearing up to start having those invitations go out. And so I'd love to have you join us sometime, Christy.
Oh my
It'd be
gosh,
fun.
that would be amazing. Lysa, you are such a gift. Thank you for this book. Thank you for your time. I know people want to know where they can connect with you on Instagram and your website and get a copy of Seeing Beautiful Again. So let us know where we can find that.
Well, you can go to @Lysa TerKeurst on my Instagram. The book is linked there, but you can also get this book wherever books are sold.
Awesome. Lysa, thank you. Thanks for taking some time this morning. And also thank you for the gift of this book. I'm so glad you're here.
Absolutely. It's always an honor to be with you, Christy. Thank you.
All right, y'all. I don't know about you, but there have been multiple times in my life where I have felt like I lost myself. Whether it was because of a difficult season or through all my roles and responsibilities and commitments, at the end of the day, I would look up and just wonder, I don't even know who I am anymore. If you've ever felt like that, I hear you. In fact, that's the very reason I wrote my new devotional, Living True, 40 Days to Get Back to You. Through this 40-day journey, I want to help you reset and refocus on Scripture and what God says about you. This is going to help you get back to you and get back to who He created you to be. You can get your copy of Living True 40 Days to Get Back to You at ChristyWright.com. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because we are doing something new today. Many of you asked me questions, and we are going to start answering some of those questions here on the show. If you have a question, by the way, you can send it to me on Instagram at Christy B. Wright, and we will try to get your question here in the fishbowl for me to answer. And I will tell you all, I've never seen any of these questions. I don't know what you've sent in, but I am here for it. Here we go. Let's see what our questions are today. First one. Can you make a video about why you chose Jesus over other spiritual choices? Well, we're just starting small, aren't we? We're just gonna ease into it. Okay, sure, great. I'll be honest, going back to my story of how I met the Lord, which is very Christian language, by the way, I realize. How I became a Christian is another way to say it. I did not grow up in the church. I went to youth group with some friends in like 8th grade and 9th grade, but I wasn't a believer. I didn't know anything about God or Jesus other than what I heard kind of secondhand from people. And I remember my sophomore year of high school, I went to a Young Life camp, and Young Life was cool in high school. So like that's where the cool kids were going. So obviously I wanted to go. And so I went to this camp, and, you know, you sing songs and you play games and, you know, do ropes courses and all that kind of stuff. But there was one particular night when we had a speaker, and this man talked to me about a God in a way that I'd never heard about. He talked to me about a God that loved me before time began, that knew me, created me, and loved me, that He accepted me just as I was. I didn't have to clean up my act or get straight A's or throw away my short shorts. I didn't have to make better decisions. I didn't have to become good, whatever that meant. But He loved me right there, as I was. And something in my spirit, the best way I can describe it is something in my spirit believed it. I didn't understand it, but by the grace of God, I believed it. And I sat there cross-legged on a dingy carpet with hundreds of other teenagers as we heard about this God that could change everything. Not only change where we spent eternity, but change who we are on this earth, simply because we were loved. And we had an opportunity to go out and pray, and maybe pray for the first time if we'd never prayed before. And I've always been scared of the dark. I've always been scared of being alone, and I've always had nightmares, and so I don't like being alone, especially in the dark. But for some reason that I still can't explain, I walked out of that club room that night in the dark, in the woods, which does sound like a scary movie, by the way. And I followed this gravel path until I got to a tree, and the only thing lighting my way was this dim starlight. And I sat down against this tree as I walked the path with a peace I can't even explain. I wasn't scared at all. And I looked up at the stars. And I just simply said, God, I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're there. I don't know if what they said is true, but I want to believe it. And I want to focus on you like I'm focusing on this star right now. I didn't invite Jesus into my heart like I'd heard other people say. It was just a silly, simple salvation prayer from a lost girl. But you know what's so cool? Is that silly prayer of asking to focus on God like I was focusing on a star was a prayer that caused all of heaven to rejoice. That night changed everything. But here's what I will tell you if you're watching right now and you don't know that God. There's no wrong prayer. You don't have to be good. You don't have to clean up your act. You don't have to make better choices. You don't have to throw out your short shorts. You don't have to get straight A's. And you don't have to pray your prayer a certain way. All you have to do is seek God. Just ask him. Ask him to come near to you, and he will. That day changed not only where I will spend eternity, but how I live my life on this earth. But here's what's the really cool about it. God has been faithful to me, personal to me, protective of me, providing for me, speaking to me, guiding me and leading me and directing me and answering prayers and taking care of me every day of my life. Before then, by the way, which I didn't know it, but even since then, he has put money in my bank account that I needed that I can't explain where it came from. He has given me a breakfast from a flight attendant on a flight when I hadn't eaten in 17 hours and I was pregnant. He has opened doors for me to work at the company of my dreams. He has given me gifts I didn't know that I had to use, like speaking and writing. If you would have told 16-year-old Christy that she would be a speaker and writer, she would have laughed at you. But that's who God is, and that's what God does. He loves to take care of you. So why did I choose? Why you chose Jesus over other spiritual choices? There wasn't a choice. He was the only one all along. I just had to realize it. Well, I'm glad we're starting slow here today, right? Starting easing into this Q&A. I want to encourage you if you're watching right now, and this sounds like something you don't know or haven't experienced, but you want to. Seek out your local church, any church. Seek out any person in your life that is a person of faith and ask them some questions. Ask them about this God I just talked about, and they'll be happy to tell you more about this Jesus that died for you and loves you and wants a relationship with you. And it can change everything. And watch how he'll be faithful to you every step of the way. Well, if I can recover from that, let's answer another question, shall we? This is fun. I don't know. Are they all like this? Are they all like, I don't know. Are we going to have, I don't know. Here we go. Okay, a life balance question. Sure, let's rein it in. Here we go. Okay. Did you find it difficult to regain balance after having your third child? What is balance? What is that? No, listen, yes. Interestingly enough, and I actually talk about this in my book coming out this fall, by the way. I don't know if I've told you guys that, but I have a book coming out on life balance in October. No, not October. That's not true. September. Children take away your brain cells, so time and numbers are hard. Here's what I've learned about balance from having my children, working, trying to do all the things just like you are. I have learned that balance looks different in every season of life. So not just balance looks different between one child to two or two to three, balance looks different in every different season. So what balance looked like before kids is very different than what it looked like after I had Carter, and very different after I had Conley, and very different after I had Mary Grace. But even within that, there was a different level of balance. Like, let's go back to, as a very practical example, back to 2017. In the spring of 2017, I was launching the Business Boutique book, and I worked all the time. That's what balance looked like. It's like, we got to get this book out there. This is the focus for this season. That summer, I didn't work a lot because I worked so much that spring. I didn't go in the office a lot, took a lot of time off, spent a lot of time with my kids. Balance was resting and catching up. So balance isn't this perfect 50-50 split, and it's not doing everything for an equal amount of time. It's about doing the right things at the right time. And I believe that when you do the right things at the right time, you feel the sense of balance that you've been looking for. So I want to encourage you, if you're asking this question because you have a third baby on the way, or you're feeling out of balance after adding a child to your family, or any of you that are feeling out of balance for any reason, I want to encourage you to figure out what is right now. If everything is important, nothing is important. I believe Patrick Lencioni said that. So figure out what is important right now in this season and do those things. When you do the right things at the right time, you will feel the sense of balance you've been looking for. But it was never because you did everything perfectly all the time. It was because you focused on the right things at the right time. That's exactly what I talk about actually in my new book, Take Back Your Time, that's coming out this fall on September 14th, I believe. So you guys can stay tuned for that. You'll hear more about it coming up. But this idea of balance being a moving target is frustrating to everybody. And when life throws you a curveball, or your family changes, or your work changes, I feel out of balance again. But I think balance is something you can create when you focus on the right things at the right time. And I would love to help you do that. Great question. Okay, let's do one more before we wrap up. Oh, here we go. How do you lead well if your personality is quiet compared to most? Really simple answer. Be you. Leadership is not a personality style. It is who you are in leading others through your influence. And silence can be a very powerful influence. A quiet spirit can be a powerful influence. When you speak with wisdom and you choose your words carefully, you gain the respect of the room, your thoughtfulness you put into what you say and how you say it. Don't feel like that you need to be an extrovert or a certain personality style. You do need to speak up. You need to be able to voice your opinion or share what's on your heart or lead through actual communication. But it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be bossy. In fact, your personality style can be the most effective in a room with people like that. I just want to encourage you to be you. You're not supposed to be someone else. You're supposed to be you, and God can and will use you right where you are as He designed you. Quiet though you may call it, it may even be more effective than you realize. All right, y'all, this was so fun. I love answering your questions. Again, if you have a question for me, you can send it to me on Instagram at Christy B. Wright. We will get your question printed off. My team will do it. I don't do it. They put it in the fishbowl so I don't see it. And then I will answer it here on the show. And I love you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. And of course, for more encouragement on becoming the person you want to be, you can visit ChristyWright.com.